take the last two questions because they're in some ways similar, although, and I would actually suggest, conversations because Tigray and what you're describing about in Turkey are, similar in the sense that you can't go to there's no ICC case, there's no avenues to the ICC, etc. And you're asking, what to do. The question, just for the last point, the Genocide Convention is restricted to particular kinds of groups and doesn't include, for example, political groups, right, or political supporters of a group, right? It's religious, ethnic, etc. Groups. All I can say is that some people think that should be expanded. Other people think that it shouldn't be expanded. And so, it's hard for me to stand here because I don't know enough about the Turkey case. But, I would continue to try to, if it was me, I guess I would try to figure out, what other possible violations of international law are at play here. I think we have seen quite understandably over the last 20 years that when there are atrocities happening, the primary interest of many advocacy groups is to try to articulate it as a genocide. And I think that's because the way that genocide is covered is that if you get a finding of genocide, this world has to do something about it. And so there is this desire to articulate things as being genocidal. Again, I think completely understandably. My viewpoint and advice probably to everybody, no matter where they are in the world, is to also think about crimes against humanity. In Turkey, you can't have war crimes. In Tigray, war crimes do apply because it was an internal armed conflict. But what about crimes against humanity here? What other types of atrocities have happened that perhaps... Look, I actually think that crimes against humanity in some ways more granular because you saw all of the different things that can be crimes against humanity, whereas genocide has these 5 specific acts. And so it's sometimes hard to fit them in unless you have killing or unless you have conditions of life. And if you don't have those things, then it can't be genocidal. Or if you haven't fit into the definition of groups, then it can't be genocidal. I don't think that's the end of the story. I think that there are other crimes listed in international criminal law that remain relevant. And I often encourage people to think through the nuances that are available and the jurisprudence, the cases that are available in relation to crimes against humanity. That's not really a particularly useful or good answer, but that's the one I got. On Tigray and steps, I mean, it's the same, for somewhat similar. I mean, what should you do? You should do exactly what you're doing. Advocate for greater understanding. Try to get the media to cover what is occurring. I also think, and again, I don't know enough about Tigray, but I think that there is and we were talking about it earlier at breakfast, when I think about the context that I'm working in, and I'll just share that, and then if that's relevant to you, then I'll just fingers crossed. There are a lot of private entities that are involved in context of mass atrocities, mining companies, including some Canadian ones that have been sued for their involvement in what amounts to atrocities, right? In places like Ethiopia. A Canadian mining company was sued for crimes against humanity in Canada for a mining operation in Eritrea, right? The Nevsun case. We see other cases in Guatemala of this. I think one thing that I encourage people to do, and I think this would be my only takeaway, is not think that you want to define something and therefore try and find everything to fit into that box. Try to see all of the different threads of problematic behavior. Try to map out the actors that are involved or that are on the ground. Private actors, state actors, who's actually involved? What are they getting for their involvement in atrocities? Do some form of, I think this is more and more the norm, to try to do some kind of mapping exercise to find out what is possible and where you can identify avenues for justice and accountability. I don't think it is, and I'm not alone in this, I think that the way that people have often, and I'm not saying anyone's like this in this room, but you do often see that it's like ICC or nothing. The ICC or nothing position is not a particularly useful way to try to achieve justice and accountability. We have to be more creative. We have to be more thoughtful. We have to understand these things as a network of criminal conduct and harms and try to do anything we can. And I think the mapping of those harms, mapping of what's happening, mapping which actors, private and non-private, are involved, can allow us to do this thing, which is seize the opportunity the moment it comes. If somebody enters into Canada, but you've mapped out that they're involved in some transnational organized crimes or international crimes or whatever it is that you mapped out, bring that forward because you have the opportunity, because you already have that information. And then maybe someone has that information on their phone or it's on YouTube or whatever, and start building these cases. But I think the only advice I'd really have is to think big so that when the opportunity arises, you can focus on the narrow rather than the opposite, which often happens, which is think narrow, try to fit everything into this singular viewpoint on genocide or a particular type of crime when you're not seeing the rest. And the rest might actually be where you can disrupt that international criminal law, that international crime activity. And I think that's what we're trying to do. That's really trying to focus on disruption of international crimes and encouraging states to use universal jurisdiction. And then advice for evidence collection, above all, be safe. Do not do anything that puts yourselves or anyone else at risk when it comes to engaging in any form of evidence collection. I mean, that's so important. And then the second thing I would say is whether, mnemonic is an organization. There's Bellingcat. There is the Berkeley Protocol on open source investigations. There's all of this information out there on how best to investigate international crimes and other offenses using online platforms. And I think I always would say the first thing people should do if they want to start doing this work is get trained to do this work. Right? Get trained to do this work. It is not an easy thing being an investigator of international crime. So getting training by the right types of people is critical. Thank you.
Let's join me for applause again to our person for his really remarkable, presentation. We really learn a lot. And I think as you are running to the airport with 3:35, probably we actually ended up in here. But later on, people has got some questions. Probably they can email you.
Of course.
Or, we can have a more interaction.
Can we get the presentation?
The slides, sure.
That's what I was.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
you will get that.
You have them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much to everyone. Thank you.
At this stage, I would like to invite Yasemin, the president of Northern Justice Watch, to join us and give the remark on behalf of Northern Justice Watch. Please oppose her. Sure, she can join us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wish my students
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to welcome you all on behalf of Northern Justice Watch. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for this critical seminar focused on atrocity crimes and, more importantly, how we as a community, as a professionals, and as advocates can respond to such crimes through effective evidence gathering. Northern Justice Watch is a human rights organization committed to supporting survivors of injustice and empowering communities through legal education and advocacy. One of the ways we do this through the LIVE project, which means Legal Understanding and Victim Empowerment, a legal education initiative made possible by generous support from the Law Foundation of Ontario. Today's seminar is part of a series under the LIVE project. In fact, this is our second session, and we are excited to continue with 10 more throughout 2025 and 2026. Each seminar is designed to make legal knowledge more accessible, more practical, and more responsive to the real-world experiences of survivors.
I also want to thank you everyone for coming here. I know you have a lot of questions about ICC, International Criminal Court, what are the domestic mechanism and what's the universal jurisdiction and what can you do. Mark talked about this international mechanism, individual versus state responsibility. So all of those will be detailed we will be discussed in detail in next seminar, chapter 3. We just want to make sure that we don't overload everything and go phase by phase. And then we will you then will understand more broadly what can do, and then maybe we can do evidence collection to actually work towards that goal. Lastly, I just want to make that there has been some confusion, I think, about Human Rights Action Group's partnership. We value Human Rights Action Group so much, but this project is specifically by Northern Justice Watch. Human Rights Action Group did not involve with the materials. They wanted to make us clear that this is a separate project from them. And thank you so much for coming here, and I'll see you in the next seminar.
Thank you very much. And then the last, speaker of this workshop, we invite Joanna Hodges for her remarks. She's actually human rights activist and board member of the Genocide Victims Alliance, and then she's also a filmmaker, and we're very grateful to have her, and she's been one of the profound advocate for human rights, and this from the last 2 years I've been working with her, and we are so proud to have her with us today. Please join us.
Thanks, Dr. Sharon. So I jotted down a couple of thoughts while we were. I thought I think I should affirm and say out loud on the record that I think that what we've done here today is actually, it really matters. We talked about atrocity crimes, genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing. We unpacked those legal frameworks, explored documentation strategies, heard ideas on how important it is to preserve evidence that could one day help hold perpetrators accountable. But I think it's really important that we think of this seminar as not the end. It's just the beginning of something, and that knowledge alone will not change the world or our situations, our cases. It's what we do with it now that we have some of that information, and each of us, whether we come from legal backgrounds, survivor communities, civil society, we just have deep moral convictions, we all can actually have a role to play in what comes next. So I think if you've come from a community that's been harmed, knowing that your voice and your memory, your courage are essential, and you aren't alone. We're building alliances and communities and initiatives like this in Canada and beyond. And the people who are, I think we're all refusing silence and demanding justice. And we can find ways to support survivors. We can challenge the systems that protect perpetrators. We can help build legal pathways that weren't there before. So I think what's next is we keep building and connect and organize and take what we've learned and apply it in courtrooms and communities, in parliament, in the media. And at the Alliance of Genocide Victim Communities, we really believe in the power of collective learning, but also in collective pressure. Pressure is so important. And we don't want to just be heard, we want to shape policy. We want to find that justice also. So I wanted to thank, Halal, Mark, Northern Justice Watch for putting this on together, and we stand with you and we move together forward. And it's our turn to kind of take that knowledge and put it into action. And never, never let justice be forgotten.
Thank you very much, Ron, for your incredible remark. I think probably is a good time to end the workshop. Once again, I really thank all of you for attending this workshop, and then also I'm really thankful and grateful to the volunteers who really put everything together and work hard, and all our distinguished speakers, Mark Thurston, Dr. Mark Thurston, Halal, Joanne, and Yasemin, and the rest who are really participating in the discussions. And also thanks to Mr. Ali, who's been always very hardworking for bringing this kind of meetings together. And I wish you all the best. We have still some foods left. You can help yourself. We have a time to, kind of exchange idea and so on. Have some social interaction. And all the best. Enjoy the rest of the day of Sunday, and then hopefully we will see you in our next workshop. Thank you very much.